seen some Turner, who was it? Lewis won the prize day one.
A
Yep, you got the glasses.
Heck yeah, dude. That was definitely one of those ones. Like we're ordering an extra pair that I'm gonna use, like for sure. Like Carmen's gonna be like, "Oh, why'd we order six?" I'm like, I don't know, and because those those look really great.
I was telling Jonah he needs to get a pair so I have like a personal photographer around at all times.
Right, right.
So maybe I'll make Jonah close a deal just so he can enter the drawing tomorrow.
Let's do it. I'm down.
Yeah. Jonah had something to do that he accidentally double booked, which is totally fine. So it's me and you today, Gabe.
Dude, that's cool. I don't know if you have something you want to start with, or you want me to just he texted me some stuff that he wanted me to
Yeah,
talk.
he texted me them too. So you just go right ahead.
All
It
right.
rains, Gabe.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's great to be on with you guys. Joan asked me to talk on something, look around at some of the people on here, some of the leaders, and we've kind of touched at these subjects a lot. I feel like this is a conversation I often have with people that are starting to grow. And the mindset behind it, it's one of those things that if you don't know what I'm about to tell you, that you will often think you're doing the wrong thing when it comes to building. And a lot of times you'll get discouraged. Like Claudia, I'm thinking of like when you and Jonah started really to build and you had that original crew and people fell off. Like you built up and then you fell off, you took two steps back. There's almost this feeling, I can't remember, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there's almost this feeling like, is building for us? Because we really feel like we dropped the ball here and we messed up. So does this just mean it's not for us?
I mean, I don't know if I ever actually said those words out loud, but I definitely remember thinking that. I'm like, no, like I'm over it. Like this was such a waste. Like I remember just getting so frustrated. I'm like, Jonah can write 100K a month. Like, why don't we just live off that for the rest of our lives? Like, come on.
I mean, everybody feels this way. So let me kind of
Yeah.
walk you guys through what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you some some pro tips on building from 0 to 150,000, from 150 to 300,000, from 300 to 500,000, and then 500,000 up to plus to growing. And I want you to have in your head what this looks like so you can target, like if building is your goal, that you're doing the right things, wrong things. So I'm just going to start. And if you have a question, throw it in the chat. I might not answer it like right away, but we'll definitely have a Q&A at the end because it's one of the most important conversations, your mindset about building. So when you're going from just yourself to 150,000, this is almost always the quickest growth you're going to experience. Um, because think about it. I mean, if you get to a spot where you're doing 30, you bring in, one or two, like maybe you're recruiting and you finally find this person, like, oh, they're a dog too. Like you're growing, they're growing. You both have a big month where you do 40, 50. Well, that's 100,000 right there, and then they recruit a couple, you recruit a couple, you get them decent, they're selling 10, 15,000. I mean, you get to 150,000 real quick, which is exactly what happened with me. I came in April of 2020, and June we did 150, 160,000. And that was like a lot of me and my buddies. Now, not everyone hits it that quick, but once you start those steps right, and just to give you steps, like if you say, well, hey, I've been in 6 months, you're talking about how you got there in 2, I got in 6. Does that mean building's not for me? No, probably a couple things are happening if you're not hitting that. For one, you need to be an adequate writer. You need to get, I had the benefit of being in direct sales for 9 years, plus a captive agent for 6 months at something completely different. So when I came in to the broker space, I started, yeah, go to Bible college, recruit all your friends. I started like right off the bat, like my first month was like 20 plus K. My second month was like 30. Like I got there right away. And then also to Jonah's credit, to what Jonah just said, the truth of that though, if you have warm market, within the sales space with a lot of people do. A lot of people do that like they could bring in like that warm market will often help you hit that 150,000. So that you can hit it a lot of different ways. That one is relatively easy. Where most people, where most of you, myself included, begin to struggle is the 150,000 to 300,000 spot. I don't know how many of this group have been down to the Munster office. Claudia, you've been to all of them. You were to the one we have now, and then you were at the one before. When we had our one before, it was much smaller. Claudia, I don't know if you remember. We
Actually
would like,
never went to that one, but I've heard about it.
oh, Jonah
I know
was.
that was, yeah,
I thought you had been there. That's my bad.
it's
So
all
we
right.
used to
Man,
have we have
that's the OG office, bro. Back in
dude.
the day, only the real ones know about that.
Dude, it was basically two levels. I don't know, 3,000 square feet. We had like 15 recruiters on the bottom floor, a little dial room that would have anywhere from one agent to six in there. When it was one, it was usually Ryan Koski, who was still figuring it out back in the day, just dialing 12 hours a day. And then upstairs, it was me, Matt, Caleb, who you got a lot of you guys don't even know, and maybe a couple more staff. And when you walked up the stairs, and if you guys ever come to the Munster office, take a look. We have our numbers from the first 2.5 years every single month up on the wall. And the staff used to joke about me because whenever I would have a visitor, I would walk them up the wall and show them the progressions. I'd be like, Drew, 160,000. Then we went to 180. Then we took a step back, 170, 240, 230. And I would like take them through that progression. And then you'll see until we went over 300,000, it was like two steps forward, one step back. And this is where a lot of people grow weary and well doing because they feel like they're having trouble getting traction. For some groups, this is different. It's like some of the most like I remember Claudia Jonah, you guys, you lost a good chunk, so did Mindy. Like, so you have like a big month of like 200,000 and then you go like to 80 and then you're like, holy crap, like I guess I'm just bad at this. Like a lot of people will feel that way. And the reason it's so challenging is because you're building the foundation of what's going to be your leadership. And you're going to bring people in that you think are going to be leaders that might not be there. Some of them will come back. Like, dude, a great example this week. One of the people, the girl I had on the uh, call the other day, Rachel, she was one of my first recruits, had a 30K month. And I thought she was going to be like one of the leaders. Well, she just left and wanted to be a teacher and then came back, this last year. So that was somebody where it's like, okay, I have a leader, and then they're gone now. I had this agent who had a big, they did Kente, then they did 15, then they did 20, and then they left. And that's why that 300,000 is so challenging. And what you need to do during that time is two main things, two main focuses. One, keep consistently putting people into your organization. That's one of the biggest because here's what a lot of us do when we don't know what to do. Here's the big temptation. Like, well, I don't know 100% the clear steps. So I'm just going to take a step back and stop until I figure it out. Well, all of you guys know that wouldn't be the thing to do if you were writing. If an agent was not writing well and or having trouble issue policies, would you be like, yeah, you just need to stop writing insurance until you like figure things out? No, that's awful advice. You would be like, you need to keep consistently doing it. And one of the things that's going to help you the most is your consistent activity will help you be better. Like the more iterations you get, you're naturally going to learn more. The temptation on the recruiting side is to pause. And one of the things that hurts the most and why a lot of people don't hit the 300,000 mark, Claudia, from start to finish, like getting an agent in the course to that agent becoming like a writer, what's the normal time frame on that?
Like 3 months.
Like 3 months. So think about it. If I get like a roll of people going and then I stop for like 2 months, well, then I'm kicking back up. I'm working really hard and I'm not seeing those results for 90 days. And that gets real discouraging. So you guys got to think about the disparity between writing and building. You can write a policy on Monday and get paid Wednesday. You're going to put money and invest time and effort into recruiting and not see that for months. So when you are struggling, one of the most important things to do is just be consistent. I'm not saying do the same exact thing, make the same exact mistakes over and over, but your people coming in your organization need to be consistent.
Well, not only
Number
that, but like the 90 days that it takes, there's so much fall off. So if you're like, I have 20 people in the course, I can't handle more right now. I
Yes.
don't think all 20 are gonna be here in 90 days when they start writing.
No. No, definitely not. I mean, it's the same thing as like, you talk to a client and you're like, oh man, Jenny sounded really good about the $400 a month. Like she just needs to think about it. I'm going to talk to her Saturday, but that's basically in the bag, 5 grand. How often does that work out, guys? It does. Like 9 times out of 10, that person is not even picking up the phone. And half of that one, that times that they do pick up the phone, they're telling you, hey, we thought about it. We don't want to do it. Like, so it's the same thing with recruiting. You don't have a magic ball. You don't know who's going to make it, who's not. You need to be consistent. Number two, and this is also a big lose for people who don't make this step during the 150,000, 300,000 phase. You need to be aware and get better at your one-on-one mentoring. This is a skill just like your sales process is. Here's what a lot of people think their problem is. They think they need better systems and processes. They think, oh man, Claudia, if I just had a better system and process for agents coming through the door and this and that. But you're like, dude, you have 8 agents. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you don't have a giant organization with hundreds of people. Your agents come in and they have the script, they have the carriers. You're not worrying about that. You need to get better at your one-on-one mentorship. I just had an agent call me last night, a manager who's kind of been up and down his recruiting. I'm not going to give any names, but for a good chunk of time. And he is crushing it right now. He's like, dude, we got 40 something people on Zoom every day. Dude, like four months ago, we didn't even have, 10. And like, and I asked him, I was like, what do you feel like it is? He's like, dude, I'm spending good time with the new agents. I'm making sure they understand the script, tone, pacing, and I'm making sure they get paid quick. They're like dropping their first sale in their first or second week. He's like, I'm getting really good at that. That's exactly what we're talking about. Getting really good at the one-on-one mentorship. So, any questions so far about that 0 to 150, 150 to 300,000? Does that track with everybody? All right. 300,000 plus. This is an exciting time because two things are true now. One, you have a good chunk of agents that are just getting it across the board, whether they be direct to you or under a leader. Like you have agents that are consistently starting to write 20, 30,000. And two, you have leaders. You have people on your team that are taking the bull by the horns. They're recruiting. They have a vision. for what they want to do, and they are recruiting people and, bringing people in. Again, this is a place where leaders make a big mistake, especially in the pinnacle model. I'm noticing because there's some other IMOs out there that 300,000 is basically no money. Like you're really not making any money. If you're doing 300,000 at Pinnacle, you're making great freaking money. Like you're rolling. You're probably seeing pretty consistently 30, 40, $50,000 of overrides. Unless you're really heavy under one leg, like you are making good money at this point. So the big temptation here is to take your foot off the gas and just be like, hey, like the money is good. Like I'm gonna not write as much. I'm not, you come in late, you leave early. That's the temptation, which, hey, at the end of the day, this is all of our own business. If you can achieve your goals, like I can tell you some problems you're gonna run into at this point. You're doing it, you're honestly taking your foot off the gas a little too quick, but you could ostensibly. Here's what you need to focus on if you want to keep growing. You have leaders, but you don't have leaders of leaders. What does that mean? And this could be an issue that you yourself have. That means that I'm good at coming in. Like, let's say I got Gabe Anderson, who says Charles Siebert today. But let's say I got Gabe Anderson and I come in and, he is uh, he's an agent and I get to make him a good agent. Like he starts selling good business. And then he recruits Claudia and he's good enough to where he is getting her to write business. Now she's writing 15, 20. So Gabe went from being an agent to a leader. But just like I had to make that personal progression to, be a leader of leaders, I need to help him do that. I need to help him turn his people into leaders. And usually you can almost always notice right when this happens because this is when people start having explosive growth. I talked to Chris Malad. I think it was like the middle. No, it was the beginning of like right around April, May of last year. And I was like, you guys are hitting another gear. And the gear is that you guys were selling, you were recruiting and you're teaching, but now, and you got some leaders, but now those guys are leaders. So now you're leaders of leaders. Like, and that's where the growth starts getting stupid. That's where you go from like, I wish I had a picture to share right now. You guys have been in the Munster office, but we went from, it literally went from months and like 6 to 7 straight months of 160 to 190 to 180 to 240 to 210 to 290 to 270, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And then we went from like 290 to 420. And then went from 420 to like 570. They went from 570 to 780. They went from 780 to 1.3 million. Like we almost doubled in 1 month. And then we went from 1.3 to 1. And it's like, what? And people always ask, like, what was it? Like, what made that just like meteoric growth? Like you said in the chat, a hockey stick. Like you're not just growing, you're literally exploding to double when you're doing, 700,000 a month to double at that size. And literally, it was two things. It was we never took our foot off the gas. Like, so that 90-day, like, split, we were personally, as leaders, getting better and better at our practices, getting new agents writing. But while we were doing that, we had become leaders of leaders. So we hit this next level of growth because it wasn't just on me anymore. Now I had a group of leaders and we were, you guys seen that example. If one horse can pull 2,000 pounds, how much can two horses pull? Well, you want to say 4,000, but it's really like six. because two can do way more than one. Like the combined strength gives them way more ability. It's the same thing in this game. That is where the explosive growth, and that's where it gets really, really fun. Usually, a lot can happen between. I'm going to be very honest with you guys, and I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm just saying it for transparency, and I want you to know a lot can happen between 0 and 300,000 to make your organization fall apart. A lot can happen. Like that, like, because you're so shallow at that point as far as leadership is concerned that one or two leaders leaves, and then part of the organization gets discouraged. Those two leaders represented a lot of volume. Like that really hurts. But once you get to that stage where you're 500,000 plus, you have leaders of leaders, it is really difficult. Like, unless there's some major thing, like world changing thing, like very little is going to change your organization, because you guys understand how it is. We're entrepreneurs. You guys know 90 plus percent of people that set out to be their own business owner, be an entrepreneur, don't make it. So don't be surprised when a lot of people that you bring on who you're like, oh, this person was so talented, they had so much promise. They don't have the discipline, they don't have the consistency, they don't have the work ethic, they whatever it is, life circumstances, their spouse isn't on board, things happen that they can't control and they don't make it. That is just part of business, no matter what business you're in, especially insurance. So even if you're doing a killer job, you will lose a good chunk of people in the organization because they're just not meant to be business owners. That's just reality. That's true of even direct sales where people have a salary and more stability, but commission only sales, like, some of you killing it, some of you are going to continue to kill it. This will be career. A good chunk of the people you bring on will not. You want your business to be so strong that when that inevitably happens, you don't even feel it. And that's because you're always growing. You have so many leaders. They're constantly coming in, training people, making more leaders. You're getting new talent. That is how you have longevity in this business on the building side. And to really get there, I mean, you have to do a couple things. For one, to get to that leaders of leaders point, you have to you have to make a decision to be selfless at some point. And I'm going to expound on this one, because you might be like, some of you guys have great examples, and you have know leaders that have been selfless. And what I say when I mean being selfless, I mean a couple things. One, they'll do things that they don't necessarily won't see the direct dollar result of, but just because they know it's the right thing to do in their business. So like if Michael calls and he's having a really tough time and he needs some help with something, I'm going to stop and what I'm doing, and I'm going to help him. Or, let's say, Ethan gets sick and, well, he has a family emergency and he has three brand new agents who are hitting the phones today. Ethan's my manager, or I'm going to take the time and really spend the time with those three managers, those three new agents. I'm going to be there for Ethan and help him out. There were times for me when I was, you know, building my leadership team that I had people who, I'm not going to name any names, but man, I had people that you would be shocked that like they were having a rough time and they were like, Gabe, I had to pay either to like pay my rent or leads. And I was like, dude, I got your leads like this week. There are people who like, hey, we're having this issue, this accident happened, and I drove out to somewhere and took someone with me and sold, and they wrote the policy, just because they needed the pick me up. Did that always work out? Like, did every time I do that, it result in that person have a long career here? No, but a lot of our leaders I've done stuff like that with. And that's how you lock in like leaders of leaders, and you create, because remember, you would try, if I asked anyone here who would want an organization of selfless leaders, almost, I would imagine everyone would raise their hand. They'd be like, well, yeah, I want, it's my company, my down, like I want an organization of selfless leaders. Well, you attract what you are. So if you want that, you got to be that. And I've seen a lot of times where people build, but I'll just say it frankly, they're not great people. And a lot of times you attract what you are, not what you want, and that comes back to bite you later. So when it comes to being leaders of leaders, like you got to be choose to be selfless at some point. Two, you have to be investing in your company. Now, up to this point, that might have, and honestly, probably earlier than this, up to this point, that might have just been, well, I'm buying leads and I have like one staff member that, kind of helps with contracting. But when you want to have leaders of leaders, you have to have a bigger value proposition than I just teach them how to sell insurance. Because once they know how to sell insurance, why do they need you anymore? Like just like well, I know how to sell insurance now. And you would think, well, yeah, good people though, they'd be like, oh, well, I taught them and this and that. And you're right, and that's true. But at the same time, you want to continue giving value to your people. You got to invest in your business. You got to go in, help people like with some things. And that's very powerful to help your organization because people rise to our investments many times. They rise to how they're invest. People they what's the very famous saying? People rise to your expectation, of them. So you want to expect the best. I found that to be true in many different areas, and one of them is like, hey, if organizations where they invest a lot in their people, where they get a lot out of their people, like, and that just makes sense. You can't squeeze water from a rock. So don't try to do that, with your people. And any questions about anything we've covered thus far? And if something doesn't make sense, don't feel for don't feel bad. Like you're not gonna make me feel weird if you're like, but Gabe, how can this be true if this or that or whatever?
I think you're just super thorough, Gabe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But no
I
question is a stupid question, guys. Hmm.
I, I always get nervous when no one has any questions. Any questions in general about building, about different levels of business? Maybe something I didn't cover, but you're like, I have this question about.
Hey Gabe, I got a question.
Go ahead, Jose.
So, at what point do you think it's okay to like step off from personal production and focus on building and training the agents more, recruiting more, building those leaders? Like, how much do you have to do a month
Great
and how many
question.
people?
I would say, you know, I mean, I'll tell you what I did, and I'll tell you what I think. I got off the field full time when we were doing about 1.6 million a month. Now, that being said, we were part of an organization where, I mean, you guys would be more profitable. Jose, you'll be more profitable at 400,000 a month than probably I was at 1.6 million.
Hmm.
Where like that's just the way it was. So that was part of it. By that time, I definitely had felt for a while that I was not giving people coming into the organization everything they needed because I was just so busy. Like, dude, writing and then getting calls from all the managers. When I say that I've answered tens of thousands of underwriting calls, like that's not any kind of exaggeration. I've answered tens of thousands. Um, I would have two considerations when you're thinking about getting off the field. Number one, the obvious one. Do you have the cash flow coming in to not only support yourself financially, but also to continue to invest in your organization? Because that was one of the reasons I kept writing, Jose, because even though we were in a less profitable business structure, we still had all those people and we still needed to invest into our people. So a lot of what I was writing was going right back into the business, pretty much all of it. and so,
You had like a ton of staff back then. So I'm
oh
trying to
yeah,
think, remember when you guys had that office, probably second office by then. I think
we
at
had too
least,
many staff. Yeah, we had like 15 staff members.
yeah, you guys had a ton of staff.
Yeah, we had too much. But yeah, we were. I think some of you guys have heard like the story. A lot of you guys don't know. I had a previous business partner, and he one day he freaked out, and he was just like, "Dude, Tuesday we have payroll, rent, leads coming out. It's like 15 grand, and we got 3 grand in the bank account, and it's like Thursday." The week prior. So he's freaking out. And I'm like, dude, just shut up. Let me go to work. I go out, I write 20 something over the week, deposits hit, and we pay our bills. So you got to have enough to not just pay yourself, but also invest. A lot of people, Jose, they make that mistake because they're like, well, I have enough to pay my own bills. They don't feel like they can invest in their business, and so that puts them more spot. And then number two, that your group doesn't need you as an example anymore. And that's a little bit of a harder decision because like you look at a group, not to talk about them the whole time, but you look at a group like Flow State and the way they've grown and they're both still writing. Um, obviously Jonah wrote for a long time. I mean, Jonah was hitting 100K months, hitting records for the team for Prosper and also hitting some of his biggest personal production months. So I would say it's less about a number of volume and less about how many people you have in your organization, more about like, okay, cash flow wise, am I going to go out of business if I step out of the field right now? Because obviously, regardless of how else your business will be affected, if you'd have to shut the doors because you can't write anymore, like, or you can't, pay for a staff member that your organization needs, you just can't. And then two, do I need to still be in the leader? At which point, Jose, here's the fun thing. You could literally just be like, hey, I'm going to go from, I was writing 5, 6 days a week. I'm going to go way back down to writing 2. And maybe you're even going to spend the same amount in leads. I actually did this earlier this year. I don't know if you guys remember April, I wrote 40K. And I was only wrote a couple days a month. Sorry, a couple days a week, but I was spending money on leads like I was, like I was going full time. I think I spent like 3 grand a week. And the reason is because we were less concerned about the profitability and more concerned about the example.
Hmm.
I wanted people to see me. So like at that point, you're like, okay, I'm cash flowing my business, but I still want to be a leader out in front of my people. Dude, let me just drop 2 grand a week on leads, right? 2 days, get all my brand new agents on to watch me. And if I double my money, whatever, it's fine. You're not even worried about the money you're making from writing. You're more focused on being an example. Does that help?
It does. Thank you.
Gotcha, bro.
Yeah, what Jonah did in the beginning of like that transitionary period was also like a part-time, like Monday through Friday was recruiting, helping agents, all that kind of stuff. Saturday, he had like 20 appointments on the books, like 25, all like, obviously virtual. So like booked every 30 minutes, double booked. And Saturdays was like the one day agents just knew like, don't ask Jonah questions, call Claudia or figure it out because he was just like cranking 10K. He was doing 40K months at only one day a week. So even if it's also like scaling back and just having those set days, I think having the set days, like Gabe said, is also just like super crucial rather than being like, oh, I'm going to dial whenever I have a chance. 'Cause I know some people try to do that and it just like doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll say this, guys, just to tease something, and the managers know what I'm talking about, but decisions like that are going to be even easier in the very near future. Like the underwriting calls that is currently a big part of a lot of your time, truly will be a thing of the past within the next couple months. So we're gonna take a big load off of the managers when it calls to underwriting calls and placement calls and stuff like that. So you'll hear more about that within the next month or two, but that's around the corner.
Are you implementing AI?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Anybody else have any questions? I put a lot of notes of what Gabe was saying also in the chat. If the chat says Jonah, it's me. So you guys can definitely save those. We also recorded this to go back. But I think what also like before while we wait to see if people have questions, I also just like wanted to say because what Gabe talked a lot about are like those like frustrations in building. And man, I remember I would have calls with Gabe. Jonah would have different calls with Gabe. Like they would be like hour-long calls of me just like having like so much. I would what's the word? Imposter syndrome? I felt like I was dealing with it. Like I was like, I don't think this is the right thing. I don't know what's happening, but it doesn't feel right. And dealing with like a lot of those like mental struggles. And I think, whenever it comes to like recruiting and building, it's very similar things that we deal with as like new agents. And so it feels foreign at first because you're like, no, like I made it as a producer. Why am I having struggles as like a manager? But you do go through that. Like I'm even dealing with it, like trying to learn like health stuff. Like I hop on the health calls, I'm like, dang, it feels weird being like brand new and not having the answers anymore. But like when it comes to recruiting, you have to think of it as like when it's leads, like you're gonna deal with a lot of people telling you no. That doesn't mean it's not working. It does take time for it to stick. People will fall off. That does not mean it's not working. And that one guy who comes in where you're like, they're going to be a beast and they are a beast and then they leave, that still does not mean it's not working. So you just have to remind yourself that like it's very similar like struggles as like you were a new agent, like when it comes to producing, you deal with when you do start growing. And for a really long time, I did not think it was working. And you just have to like continue to remain consistent in that growth. Because like it's funny because Gabe kept talking about the numbers. I pulled up Prosper and we were stuck at like 100K for a really long time, but we didn't break 300 for like at least a year. And then it took us like another like 8 months to break 500. And then once we hit 500, it was like a rocket ship. It just like snowballed after that, which is like really cool to see. Like, yeah, we were stuck at that for so long. And then it just like kept going up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's the story of so many groups. And I think they all think they're the exception. They're like, man, like 100K, I guess is just our fate. That's all we're ever gonna be. And then they believe that, and then so they start doing actions that make that true, like they take their foot off the gas or they do it in spurts, and those 90-day gaps really start affecting them because they're like, man, I worked really hard, I didn't see anything, I stopped. Oh, things started, they start seeing the fruit of that investment 90 days later, so it reinvigorates them, they jump back in, things slow down because they slowed down. It was back in the day, those guys, we used to, when we ordered fresh mortgage mail, which is a lot of you guys don't even know about that. Because a lot of it was use second chance mailers. How fresh mortgage mail worked, it was always 3 weeks behind. So that means I had to pay for fresh leads, which were expensive, like 70, 80 bucks a pop. I had to pay for them right now, and I wouldn't see those leads for 3 weeks. And I had to keep paying every week. So to start a fresh mail campaign, you needed like 6 or 7 grand to be able to invest. And you knew you weren't going to see the fruit of that for at least 3 or 4 weeks. And that was a heavy investment. And Claudia, once in a while, we'd have an agent who just did something real dumb where they paid for that 1 week and then they just sat on their hands waiting for those leads. And then the leads came 3 weeks later, they'd make a couple sales and then they'd buy another thing of leads and then they have to wait again, and they're just like so frustrated because it's like nothing's consistent. It feels like they're doing wrong. Chargebacks hurt way more. And the truth is, you got to be consistent even when you don't see it. So I got to hop off to another call, guys, but I hope you got a thing or two. If you have any questions, feel free to message me. It was an honor to be on with you guys.
Thank you so much, Gabe.
God bless everybody.